whereas I might not if I was just relying on my willpower to turn up each week. And I was sitting there and suddenly, and I thought, with all the things that I've done, they'd never have me here. And I was sitting there and a lady came through the crowd and she said, I think you must be, and said my name. And she said, I have a friend who I think might be friends with your mother too. And she tells me you're musical. Would you like to join the choir? And I've always noticed in the Bible the sense of being called out by name. That was a really powerful moment. So I went along and I joined the choir and I had a very incomprehensible time, really. I didn't get it. I went along diligently. I was the youngest by many years. The first service I went to was really not auspicious because it was a particular reading that related particularly to some of the bad things that I'd done, and I sat there thinking I had big purple arrows pointing at me, and I fled at the end of the service. I thought, I can't go back there. And the vicar, wise vicar, came and just had a cup of tea in the week and just made it clear that I'd be back there. And then and I went back and my children started going there with me, and I probably still didn't really understand. I didn't get this Jesus person at all. And about 3 years later, in conversation with the vicar, he asked a question, and it just unleashed everything. And I burst into tears on the poor man. And he said, I've been waiting 3 years for this story. And the upshot of it was, one of the wonderful things about the Christian faith is that confession and absolution. In other words, if you go before God because of what we're told Jesus did for us on the cross, and we go in repentance, he will wipe that clean. And I went along to the most embarrassing moment of my life, really, with on my own in a church with a vicar, and confessed everything. And he read a particular piece of scripture with me, and I remember filling up with heat from my feet to my head. And I absolutely know the power of God's forgiveness. And there's a line in the psalm that we read together which said, wash me clean and I will show people your ways, show sinners your ways. And that is where my ministry came from. I wasn't ordained for years and years. I had no idea that was ever going to happen. But over time, pokes and nudges from God. And I've been a vicar now in rural parishes, and suddenly this, go and do something else, says God. So here we are.
Now, you were out, as you say, in rural parishes in the beautiful countryside of Northamptonshire, running little churches with small congregations, perhaps?
Yes, a little bit mixed. One was a bigger church. I guess we had, membership of about 150, something like that. And some of them really very little indeed, so 10. And that is one of the pleasures, actually, of rural ministry. You can build very small, intimate relationships in Christ, as well as the bigger, let's all worship together corporately kind of relationship.
And had you imagined staying in that sort of ministry?
By and large, yes. I wasn't sure I'd stay where I was forever, but it's a very specific ministry. Rural issues are very different to urban issues. There is poverty, but it's little tiny pockets. I was in a canal village, and so the pastoral care of some of the people living on the edge of society, really, was quite intensive, and those were relationships that I expected to last. I thought my next move would probably be another set of parishes, perhaps bigger, maybe urban, but perhaps bigger.
Right. But here you are as Canon Missioner, a very unusual and unique role in Peterborough Cathedral. Did you apply for the job?
Oh, I couldn't possibly comment. It's a wicked question. I think the probably the phrase I'm looking for is a little tap on the shoulder, and my response to the bishop at that point, this is Bishop Donald, obviously, of Peterborough, was, I'm not a cathedral person, don't know. And he said, that's what we need. And then you will know, Adrian, I'm sure, that when God is in something, everything just all the obstacles fall away, everything falls into place, and that's how it was, really. So I'm very confident that I am called to be here, and that it is me that is called to be here.
Now, there's something about you that I think is very much a people person and relationship-based. relationships seem key to your ministry. And I imagine you've had to learn to get on with all sorts of people, some of them not Christian, some of them even quite anti what church is about.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that? How do you respond to people who don't think very highly of church?
I was one. So
yes.
I have no problem with that at all. And in fact, I think like any institution, if we're honest, the church has a lot to answer for in the past, maybe even to some extent in the present. It's not a perfect institution by any means, and some of those criticisms are not invalid. Some of them are historical, and I think part of the challenge for us as ministers in the church is to just live it and demonstrate what it is now. And, I love it when you get people coming along to a service who say, well, I didn't realise church was like that. and that, that's, I love doing that. Yes. I also, and this is going to sound desperately sanctimonious, I'm sorry about that, I'm a vicar. But, there is a command that we see the face of Christ in everyone we meet. And that doesn't just mean Christians, it means everyone we meet. Everybody is God's child. One way or another, and therefore falling out with somebody, it implies that you're also falling out with somebody made in the image of God. Yeah. And we are all valued by him, whoever we are, whatever we've been, whatever we've done, we're all loved and valued by God. And if I'm following faithfully as a minister of God, I have to try and do that too. I have to say I do not always succeed, but I try. Indeed. As I'm sure you do. Yeah.
Well, I had an experience of that myself a couple of weeks ago when we opened St Mark's Church Hall for our homeless in the city during the daytime because of the sub-zero temperatures in the daytime.
Yeah.
And we got to know them as individual people rather than objects that we saw sitting on the street corners or in shop fronts. And they're fascinating people, and they have a story to tell, and they gain in dignity when you give them a bit of care and attention and a cup of tea and a warm place to sit.
And also when you give people the opportunity to give to you in whatever way. I find one of the most difficult things, I think, for some of these people on the streets is that they have no exchange. They can't give back, and some of them really want to. And to try and enable that somehow, I think, is quite important.
So they feel they have nothing to offer, and therefore they're more withdrawn.
That is what I hear from some of them, certainly.
Yeah. So you have been able to engage in conversations?
Yes, I'm beginning to know one or two of the more regular characters around Peterborough, but certainly from my experience with the canal visitors that we had, absolutely. It doesn't mean just because you see the face of Christ in them, doesn't mean you don't get bloomin' angry with them sometimes, because some of the behaviours are very challenging.
Yes.
And my behaviour would be challenging in those circumstances, I think.
Now, when I came to Peterborough 6 years ago, this is my first experience of being in ministry in an inner city environment. And what strikes me is there are a whole variety of different churches of what we call different denominations. So Church of England, which you and I are members of, Baptist, Methodist, United Reformed, independent churches, evangelical churches. I love an expression that Bishop Donald used once when he came to preach during the week of prayer for Christian unity, and that was, we are all branches of the one church that Jesus brought into being. And that reminds me that we all belong to the one Lord.
Yes, absolutely.
But I want to ask you about the Church of England. What do you feel is so unique and important about its role and its calling in our country?
I think that the Church of England does something very important, actually. It's a funny beast. I think anyone that looks on it, particularly from outside, must really have a quizzical face. But it has a number of functions. One is that it pulls many, many Christians who might differ under one umbrella. It isn't fully ecumenical, of course it isn't, but the spectrum of different churchmanships, the spectrum of different theological positions within the Church of England is quite wonderful. It is very reasoned, or I think it's very reasoned about the way it goes about making its decisions. That can mean it's agonisingly slow because it does really think about things, and sometimes over years and years and years. And the whole issue of women's ministry and lots of issues are pondered and chewed and argued over, generally fairly respectfully, and I think that's a useful way of doing theology, really. There's nobody is really allowed to take a position and impose it. I think that's a good thing. It's got a compromise intention about it. There's various views on whether a national church as an institution is still a useful thing to us. I think perhaps the Church of England needs to make some decisions about what it thinks that means. In the 1940s and 50s, or 30s and 40s, when it was a part of the bastion against fascism and socialism in the Second World War, and it was used with the media and the government and education to build up what it was to be Britain. And it's sort of floated away with a wider liberalisation of society generally. And its function is slightly less crystallised, I think, than perhaps was the case. And it pulls in the direction of, should we go back to being just pure church and have members, or should we, continue to be the church for the nation? On balance, I think it's useful having a church in a positions of potential power. The danger is if it abuses that.
Indeed. I think. But we do relate to our brother and sister churches. Yeah.
And I think provide opportunities for them in that position. I think I used to run a charity that was very ecumenical. And the fact that the Church of England was involved gave some of the smaller denominations, particularly the chapel kind of denominations, the opportunity for a voice in places of power that they perhaps wouldn't have otherwise had. That may or may not be desirable, but I think generally it's a useful thing.
Perhaps something that's going to be a little newer for you in coming to Peterborough, a very multicultural and multi-faith city, is the interfaith engagements. Have you had any contact previously?
I have to say no. Apart from, my children in school, normal life, yes, but not in churches. My 3 villages and the town around which they were satellites really did not have a lot of different faiths and races in it. So this is new to me. I welcome it. I'm looking forward to it.
Indeed, and we've talked about getting you an introduction to the Peterborough Interfaith Council, and also to visiting some of our local mosques, where I know that you would be, as I have been, made very welcome.
I will very much look forward to that. And that I'd like to think that as the cathedral, whilst it is a Church of England place of worship, actually the position and sort of status of that place in the city should be for everyone. All faiths and none. It's the city's cathedral as well as being a Christian place of worship. Sure. And I hope that part of the mission that I engage with will be actually to make that known and to make sure that people know they are welcome, whatever creed they follow.
And in the second half of my show tonight, we're going to be talking more about the work of the cathedral, both what goes on inside the cathedral and how the cathedral can reach out and connect with the community around.
Okay.
Let me just give your voice a break for a moment, and I've got some news to share with our local residents, and this is about scouting. And this is a message to all mums and dads, uncles, aunts and grandparents. We're getting a new, exciting activity for primary school age children. Scouting is coming to our local community. We will be meeting at the Beaches School, but the Scouting is for all children of the right ages who live anywhere in the Gladstone area. First of all, we need adults to help make it all happen. You'll have fun as you train with some of the best Scout leaders in the country. The commitment is flexible, and there are many ways adults can help to form a team to lead Scouting at the beaches. So if you are a parent, grandparent, uncle, aunt, next-door neighbour, or just someone who has a desire to help and develop young people, you would be most welcome. And did I mention you'll have fun? Even if you can only help once a month, once a term, or once a week, we have opportunities for you. Could you learn to work directly with the children? Or be part of a support team? Or part of a team of trustees providing administrative support, or even backup resource support? No skills or qualifications are required, because Scouting has an inclusive and flexible training system to suit your needs and the time you can give. There will be mentors as well as the training to help you with all of the skills that you need for any of the roles that are on offer. The Scouting programme is based on developing and motivating young people in a wide variety of life skills, including being creative, outdoor activities, learning to work as part of a team, and making progress adapted to each child's needs and abilities. And it's fun. Beavers are for children from 6 to 8 years old, and cubs from 8 to 10.5. How can you find out more? We have an open session on Tuesday the 27th of March from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. in the Beaches School Hall, where you can see what we can offer and find out how you can help. You can also contact us through Community First Peterborough. The email is communityfirst@outlook.com. Remember, Scouting is open to everyone, girls and boys, no matter what faith, ability, needs or financial constraints there may be. And it's fun and a great way to help bring up our next generation. Another piece of news I have for us is Sadaka Day. Sadaka, am I pronouncing that correctly, is that voluntary charitable giving over and above zakat. And it's not so much about giving money, but our time and talents and actions, and even a smile is charity. In 2015, Sadaka Day was born as a day of social action. This year, Sadaka Day will take place on Sunday the 18th of March, when individuals, community groups, mosques, women's groups, schools and families can all get involved. Everyone can do something small or large and become part of a wider movement of activity all over our country. Doing something together is a lovely way to build community life. Have you thought of going with a friend litter picking? Or you could register to give blood or as a blood stem cell donor. You might visit a care home to share some cakes with our elderly, or help to plant seeds and bulbs to make the public areas around our streets more attractive. It's all about creating and valuing gratitude, friendship and service. Let's give something back into God's creation for Sadaka Day.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Have you visited Amar Food Store yet? Now open at Lincoln Road Triangle, 613B Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Pay us a visit and take advantage of our special offers and great range of products on groceries, vegetables, fruits and halal meat. All your favourite brands under one roof. We take payment by card, have free customer parking and offer a free local delivery service. Also available, PayZone for bill payments and money transfer services to Pakistan. Amar Food Store and Halal Meat. Now open at Lincoln Road Triangle. Call us on 01733 68 73 74. High in quality, low in prices. Third world and developing countries are home to some of the most vulnerable children on the planet. Malnutrition, severe lack of medical aid and access to clean water are just some of the horrific challenges faced by orphans across Africa and Asia. Children of Adam, a Peterborough charity, need your help to bring aid to these orphans for just £25 a month. To sponsor an orphan or assist with other projects, please call 0300 321 0032 or visit www.childrenofadam.net.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
Need a great place to chill out? Look no further than The Lounge for quality food and drinks at a great price. Try our varied menu: pasta, seafood, burgers, grills, salad, soup, rice and sides. Also hot and cold drinks, milkshakes and mocktails. Leave room for our exquisite desserts. The Lounge, 417 Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call 01733 709 306 to order for delivery. The Lounge, friendly service with a great atmosphere.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها.
Peterborough's community radio station, Salaam Radio 106.2.
Welcome back to our listeners to Salaam Radio 106.2 FM and online at salamradio.co.uk and on Facebook and YouTube. This is Adrian Holdstock presenting Community Matters, the radio show for all communities across Peterborough and beyond. We're talking tonight about the work of the cathedral with Sarah Brown, its new canon missioner. Peterborough Cathedral is one of the finest Norman cathedrals in England. It was founded as a monastic community in 654 AD. It became one of the most significant medieval abbeys in the country, the burial place of two queens and the scene of Civil War upheavals. The cathedral is free to visit and look round with fascinating displays about its work and history. The staff are very approachable and friendly and very happy to answer questions. And there is always someone available to talk more personally about spiritual matters of faith or life concerns. Sarah, I'd like to ask you a little more about the life of the cathedral. First of all, what is a cathedral that is different from a church?
I'm discovering exactly what the differences are, very slowly. The cathedral is effectively the seat of the bishop. So that doesn't mean he's there all the time. It doesn't mean he's there every week for worship or every day for worship, although he often is. But it is where his seat, which is the word cathedra, actually means seat, of his teaching. So it's the sort of centre of his teaching, which makes the cathedral in relationship to the parish churches, not just in Peterborough but across the whole diocese, something of a sort of mothership, or the mother church. And at its best will be a resource and a centre, really, for all the churches. We're a funny-shaped diocese, so some of them are an hour and a half away plus.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how successful that sort of mothership role is for some of those. But that's, I think, the idea.
But you're certainly a flagship for the church in Peterborough because you hit the skyline. And
absolutely. You can't miss us, can you?
Indeed.
I mean, I think in terms of the life of the cathedral, very, very central to that is the worshipping life of the cathedral. And it's why there were always resident clergy, the canons, because rather going back to the monastic roots, there is daily prayer, but not just daily prayer, multiple daily prayer at different times of the day. Every day, certainly, early morning prayer and evening or evensong, which, of course, with the cathedral, we have the benefit of an amazing choir.
Now, that idea will resonate with Muslim listeners who themselves have a practice of salat, of prayer 5 times a day, preferably in the mosque if they can get to the mosque. But what would a typical day in the life of the cathedral contain?
Goodness me, I'm not sure I've found a typical day yet. It begins with early morning worship, and there's typically a sort of reasonable number of regular people will come, and that is a beautiful time, particularly at this time of year where it's not glaringly bright in the morning, so you have the light coming up in the building, and the colours of the stone and the shadows and the way it's lit is very powerful, very evocative of holiness, actually, and you have a sense of stillness and waking and God's presence in there. So that I think is how it starts. And then gradually we see, I think if you had one of those speeded up cameras, you'd see people hustling and bustling through it all the time. At the moment we've got some major works on, so there are workmen about, some of them heaving great things up to the ceiling with pulleys. We have people laying out, there are very clear practical functions that have to happen in a building that is used for so many things. Typically we'll have some guides, some guided tours happening, a lot of tourists coming through the door, a lot of people coming to look at the books in the bookshop. We have school trips, school groups coming in. We've got a super, really impressive actually educational offering where we can take schools, not just religious education, but also mathematics, looking at the design of the building, the sciences, history, of course. I'm trying to think what the other one, there is another one and I've forgotten what it is. Music, of course. Yes. So there are lots of things that we can do for schools and children. I recently was interrogated by a very mixed group of Year 11s, which was quite scary, actually. They did have some very penetrating questions. Typically, there will be people coming wanting prayer.
Yes.
And finding somebody to pray with and a quiet place to pray. And that might be a young mum afraid, or it might be somebody with nowhere to live, or it might be somebody with illness in the family, or all kinds of things. So there's some of that. There is a lot of business to do to run a place that big. One of the things we're having to look a lot at the moment is safeguarding.
Yes.
Making sure that we're being professional and not letting things happen that shouldn't happen. So it's always different. There's always a mass of people coming through, sometimes business meetings, sometimes meals. And then again, you get towards the end of the day, there's always organ practice. And that's, if you're lucky enough to come in the afternoon when the organist is practicing for worship, and it's quiet, you can sit and just be overwhelmed by music and the sound of God in the arches of the building, really. And then evensong, and go with the light going down and the voices of the choir singing the psalms and hearing the word of God. And it is a very stilling kind of worship. very different to Sunday worship, which is, of course, much more active and bigger scale and involves the communion and the Eucharist. But that's a reasonably typical day, I would say.
I came to Evensong last night with you, and I was really struck by that sense of reverence and the beauty of the singing of the choir.
Yeah.
But if tourists happen to be visiting at the time when you're going to have a time of worship, is it all right if they stay and watch?
I think it is.
Yes.
I think we hold that service generally in the choir stalls, so people, I think, feel they have to either come in or go away. Actually, there is an awful lot of chairs set out in the main body of the church, and it's fine to sit and just be with that service. It's not a service that requires great participation. It's about being in the presence of God and being lifted to think of God and to hear from God.
Yes.
And, you know, whatever, I think, your faith, you can gain something from that service.
Do you know, I have that similar feeling when I have been invited to a mosque and I sit at the back. I'm always offered a chair and I feel, actually, I would like to sit on the carpet and just observe the imam leading the prayers, the beauty of the recitation in Arabic, and the observance by what would be the men who gather together. Something that's very in contrast to churches. People go into church and they tend to sit at the back and then sit at the front, whereas the practice in the mosque is that they start in the centre at the front and stand shoulder to shoulder or toe to toe, and then the second row fills up and so on. And there is a beauty, there's something of an otherworldliness in that Muslim
and you
worship. Can
feel... I haven't seen Muslim worship really, but you can. I think any worship given with a clean heart to God, where it is all God directed, is very powerful and very special and important.
Yes,
I would say, you know, I would love to come and be in a mosque during worship if that's permitted, but also I would say don't feel because you're not a Christian that you can't come and feel this at Evensong. I'd love to see lots more people coming to Evensong just to feel.
Yes.
Nobody will tell you what to think.
Indeed. It's not about a strict set of regulations and doctrine.
It's absolutely not. And neither is it about saying you must believe this. It's about contacting God, being in touch with God.
Now, we're in a special time of the church's year, the seasons that go round from Christmas. Now we're heading to Easter, but we're in a time of Lent, which in some ways is equivalent to the holy month of Ramadan. Lent is a time when we might think of giving something up, and we devote our thinking towards what happened at Easter. What's going to be going on in the cathedral that's special this Lent and Holy Week and Easter? Is it?
Lent has been very gentle this year because most of the clergy are very new, and we only arrived just before the beginning of Lent. So we have some Bible study, some gentle things. We've been recommending reading with members of the congregation. Holy Week, everything heats up really, because it's where we follow the story of Jesus to the cross, and therefore the story is incredibly powerful in itself, and we have all kinds of services and activities going on through that week, services that we don't normally have, that take us through that story, and then culminating, of course, on Easter Sunday with noise and light and joy.
Do you start very early on Easter Sunday?
I believe so. I haven't checked if I'm on that one to lead that yet, or if I can just go along and be half asleep at the same time.
Right. Now, I really want to get on now to how the cathedral connects with the city. What's your vision?
I have a vision for this. And it's really a vision, I think, that is dependent on working alongside other denominations and other faiths, because I think all of us have very similar intentions in terms of charitable giving, in terms of the poor, in terms of the homeless, in terms of those who are in need. I think we can all see the problems of an elderly population, of mental illness, of dementia. And it seems to me that it's going to be the faith communities that need to step up, because statutory offering is not going to be what we need it to be, I think.
It doesn't have the resources.
It doesn't have the resources. And my sense on a bigger scale is that the churches and the mosques possibly need to do for social care, or some parts of social care, what the Church of England did for education 100 years ago, and sort of take a real step in this. As far as the cathedral is concerned, I have a ridiculous vision of using one of the buildings, which currently we don't even afford to own, so it is a ridiculous vision at the present, for faith work.
Right.
And that would mean I'd love to see us take the best of what each of the faiths do. So, like the Gurdwaras feed people well. Yes. We should be doing that too. I'd like to see the cathedral being a little bit more behind some of the initiatives for winter night shelters and drop-ins. I'd love there to be a dementia day centre or something. I don't know how to do this yet, and I'm hoping that there will be other people with similar kind of vision across the city, that between us and with God's help and God's will in it, we can make this happen. It's ambitious and entirely gospel, and entirely, no doubt, Islam and all the others too. And I think we really do need to jointly resource and jointly coordinate those resources.
Do you see the cathedral getting involved in the civic life of the city?
The cathedral has always done that to some degree. I think it's been better at that, I suspect, than at some of the more social engagement. The previous dean was very good at that, I think, did some good work there, and we I think are on many of those councils and go to many of those events. I was at a Commonwealth flag raising event myself just earlier this week. So some of the civic stuff is happening. My wish, prayer, whatever you want to call it, is that the cathedral returns a bit to its roots in the sense of welcome, hospitality. I live next door to a hall that was an old hospital in the Middle Ages. That's what cathedrals and monasteries used to do. And I'd like to see something of that in that wider vision that I talked to you about, so that actually we become a blessing on the community, not just because we're a nice tourist attraction, but actually because we are bringing the love of God to the community where it's needed. And that, I think, you will see a changed community if the faith communities can do that, and that's my ambition for the cathedral.
Surely. You mentioned that word blessing there. How would you unpack that word?
I think it's very easy for churches and cathedrals to, because we're always short of money, to be seen in a sense of needing support. And I think we need to turn that on its head, because where we are doing what we are commanded to do in the scriptures, taking the love of Christ out, or the love of God out, feeding the hungry, releasing the captive. I don't mean going to the prison and letting everyone out, in case anyone's alarmed, but oppressed people, or people who are addicted to one thing or another, working with those, speaking out for those that don't have a voice. We will start to bless our community, and people will start to see what that love of Christ actually means. It's all very well preaching it, but unless we are profoundly and deeply living it, we are a tourist attraction with some worship attached, and we mustn't be that.
Surely. Now, for a cathedral of the size that we have in Peterborough, which is glorious, majestic building, it must take quite a lot of staff just to make it function. And those staff, are they part of your responsibility?
Yes. I mean, I don't line manage all of them, clearly. But yes, I mean, they are all part of the community. And, you know, one of the things that we say about the church is that we are all parts of one body. And where one part of the body is in trouble, then the other parts must rally round and help. When one part of the body is rejoicing, then the other parts rejoice with it. And that's true of the way the cathedral works, I think. That everyone, whether or not they are deeply of faith, they are part of that community. And that's everyone from gardeners and cleaners and people volunteering to take guides round, or you know, all kinds of people we have. They are all part of the community, and we're there to love God and love each other.
And amongst all those people touring round the cathedral, have you met any what I might describe as unique characters?
How many do you want to know about? Of course, my lips are sealed. Everyone is just perfect and wonderful. Yeah, we certainly have some unique characters. I think cathedrals and large churches too will attract unique characters, and they're part of it. We must be very careful to hear the voices that are a little bit different, because sometimes that's how God works, through those people.
Yeah. Now, if somebody had thought, I don't know about the cathedral, it's not my faith, it's very big and imposing, I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable visiting there, what would you say to them?
I would say I have a certain amount of sympathy to that, because it's frightened me witless to start with. It's a very big building. However, what I would say is the people are good people. And they are just people. Don't be daunted by the building. Walk. One of the things I love to see already is when children walk in through the door and their jaws just drop.
Yeah.
The awe and wonder of walking into a space like that. There is nothing like it. So, you know, come and see that, and actually you won't be harangued and harassed by people trying to tell you things or sell you things. It's a space to walk around and discover, and there's so much to discover about our history, our common history, about Peterborough, and about faith in this place, actually. No, don't be afraid of it. It's a church, but it's a very special place. One of the things that astonishes me about it is the long line of people that have been praying and worshipping in that place for, well, certainly 900 years in this building, but a number of hundred years before that. It's an unbroken line of faith and holy people and real people. And that's really what it's about. It's a stone monument to God, but it's been loved by people down the ages.
A place in which prayer has been offered to God.
Yes.
For over 1,000 years. And when we shared a coffee yesterday, because that was the first opportunity we really had to meet and to talk about this interview tonight, you were telling me about you get a special light sometimes in the way the sun breaks through.
Yes.
And you just get that impression that you're in the company of.
Yes. It's sometimes it's even more than that. It's in the morning Eucharist, where we share the bread and wine and remember Jesus' death, death and passion. And sometimes there's a point in the service where there's a priest at the altar raising his hands. Usually it's either him or me, a him or it's me. And when I close my eyes, you know, it's almost as if you can still see the light through your eyelids, and I see different shapes of people, and it always makes me think of 900 years worth of priests celebrating at the altar, raising the bread, raising the cup, and I do feel that I see some of those. It's a strange experience.
Now, we can't conclude without mentioning the 900th anniversary, because not only Cathedral, but the city itself has made this quite a big event and talking about 900 years of Peterborough Cathedral.
The communications department would kill me if I failed to mention it. So yes, good question.
So what would you like to say about that, 900?
I think 900, we've got a lot of events coming up to celebrate, and it's the city celebrating, not just the cathedral, it is the city celebrating. We have some amazing things happening. I believe hundreds, whether actually 900, hundreds of Morris dancers are apparently converging on the building at some stage in the early summer. We have all kinds of events, but the great highlight that has just been announced is we've won the right to host the Soyuz space capsule, can't even say it, let alone, which is going to be within the cathedral. Tim Peake's space capsule.
That's the British astronaut who went up in a Russian space vehicle.
Yes, and we have that space vehicle capsule coming along with some supporting material. Hopefully we'd like to think he will come and speak as well. And that's going to be in the cathedral for, I think, from August to November. So, make that an excuse to come in the 900th year. Yes. I can't think of anything more appropriate than the height of modern science in a building that's been a centre of faith and looking out at God for so many years. And we're going to have some interesting discussions about science and faith and about creation and the cosmos.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's going to be quite exciting.
Yes.
So it's going to be a good summer, this 900th year. A lot of things on. Do have a look at the website because my brain's just emptied and I can't remember any of the other events, but there are lots of them.
Surely, yeah. And then... Like you, my mind went blank for a moment there. We're coming towards the end of our show now. What would you like us to go away thinking about the cathedral and it's the part it's got to play in the future of community life in Peterborough City?
I think we're still working that one out, but I think what I really want to say is it is there. It is ours. And by ours, I don't just mean the Church of England, I mean Peterborough's. It's for everyone. It has something to offer. Of course, at my heart it's a place of Christian worship, and it's there all the time for the whole city, for that. And even if nobody walked in, we will be praying for the city every day, and for all the communities within that city. I think we have exciting opportunities to join in more with some of the city events, so some of the festivals that go on. I'd like us to be adding a spiritual dimension to those events, so that everyone knows that if there's a Polish festival or something, there will be something appropriate in the cathedral that mirrors that. That if there's Black History Month, we will have something in the cathedral that represents that and the spiritual side of that. So I want us to join in, but I'd like people to come and join in with us too, and just come and let your jaw drop and enjoy this space that we have. And I think however you see God, you can find him there.
That's a wonderful message to hear. Sarah Brown, thank you so very much for coming on Community Matters.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight on Community Matters. Coming up next week, I have a couple of guests on 2 different topics. Ed Walker, the Chief Executive of Hope Into Action, will be telling us how ex-prisoners and rough sleepers are being housed and supported through the long journey back to confident and independent living. And before that, Age UK will be coming to talk about loneliness and loneliness support. That's all we have tonight. Salaam, shalom, and the peace of God to you all. Good night.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.